What's up, YouTube? Got a deck profile for you here on Lightsworn Tearlaments. This is probably my favorite deck of the current format, which the current format is pretty much garbage. It's just all a Tier 0 Yugioh Snake Eyes format. So until we get a ban list, this is the deck I'm playing with. Um, Very enjoyable to play with. Obviously not Tier 0, not even Tier 1, probably high Tier 2. But probably the most enjoyable deck I have right now to play with. So just going to give a deck profile on what I have so far for this deck. Still working on making improvements to it, taking it to locals to get it to the right ratios. But right now I'm playing with 50 cards, and I feel like I have the best version of it until I get a couple other cards in that I want to decide what they're doing or not. So here we go. So the first engine I want to start with by showing is going to be the Lightsworn engine. So first three of the Lightsworn Dragonling. So you need three for sure. I've seen some lists run two, but you need three because he's your starter. Like he's one of the main starters. I mean, there's no one true starter in this deck. As long as you just start milling, it's great. But he's your guaranteed to get into the Synchro 8 into Minerva. You use him to send the thing you always want to send off of him is Fearless right away to get Fearless in rotation. And then you have your 4 plus, your 4 tuner. So that gets you your Synchro 8, where then you can send 2 more to get that extra sync on the field. So having as many of him as possible, I say max on him is huge. If anything, I might try at some point testing with just 2, but I think 3 is mandatory. You can special summon him if any Lightsworn is in the graveyard, which including himself. So if you mill one of them, you can special summon the other and then get what you need in rotation. The other 3 that's important to max out on is the 3 Wolf. Wolf is not once per turn, so anytime he's milled, it's getting you a level 4 to get into a level 8 Synchro, or just extra bodies, which is insane. So you need a max on Wolf for sure. Cannot have less than 3 of him. Like I said, Dragonling, you could get it with 2. Wolf, you definitely need 3. The other Lightsworn, you definitely need 3, no matter whether you're playing a 50 card, 45, or even a 40 card Lightsworn deck. You need 3 of the Weiss here. So Weiss, why you need 3 of him is because you want to see him in your hand. Him plus any Lightsworn, you send one back to the top of the deck and mill. So and it special summons him, so that gets a free tuner on the field, a free body, and then plus it starts you off on your milling. So that's why I like honestly maxing out on all the Lightsworns, just because I always want to see a Lightsworn in hand, because that's what this deck is. Even though I'm running a Tearlaments engine in it, it's mainly Lightsworn, and you want to and I max out on 3 of each, but him for sure. Him and Wolf, you definitely need 3. Now the next Lightsworn that you probably don't need 3, you could actually get away with only 1. You probably only need 1 because you're just sending the 1 off of Dragonling, and then you're bringing him back off of Weiss. But I like 3 because, again, I'm trying to max out on Lightsworn. That's what the deck is, and it's getting you free bodies. So always milling 1 is always going to help. Plus, during the combo, you're going to banish 4 different names anyways, so you would want to have more than 1 in rotation anyways, just for their grind game. So that's why, I have 3. Again, if you're running a 40 card deck, you could get away with 1, but I'm running 3. If anything, I change with this deck, I might go to 60 card deck, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but in that case, I probably wouldn't change the numbers of my Lightsworns. That's why it's great having 3 of each. The other Lightsworn, the last one I have, is just the Punishment Dragon, which isn't a Lightsworn, but it's what you're adding off of Dragonling. Judgment Dragon I do run on the side, but I do not main it. I only main him. The reason I main him is because, first of all, he's a quick effect during your opponent's turn. That shuffles everything back from the face-up banished or graveyard. So it can be a disruption. Flamebird effect in graveyard to special 2 fires. As soon as Flamebird activates, you just activate him, shuffle everything back. So great disruption. Also, he's great at helping you win in the grind game. If I was going second, maybe you could take him out for Judgment Dragon, but I always would probably never take this card out of the deck just because it's a free body. Most of the time, free access to him, you're getting him off of the search. So really, what's insane is a lot of the card effects of the Lightsworn and the Tearlaments activate when they hit the graveyard by card effect. This being able to search and add this to your hand is as soon as this hits the graveyard. It doesn't matter if it's for synchro material, discarding off of a cost effect, anything you get to add him. So it's easy access to get him in your hand, free body, and like I said, is the only thing you can't cycle back is the Lightsworn monsters. So you just use the shufflers, which I'll show. I have the two shufflers in here for the Tiamat's package. You shuffle them back and then use this to send everything else back. So he's huge, right? Definitely maining him. I probably would never cut him out. Even if I was going second, I probably would always have him in there. The last thing for the Lightsworn is going to be just the 3 spells. I do have the trap in my side deck, but maining these aren't once per turn. So the mills off of this to add a Lightsworn, it's by cost, not card effects. So none of the Tearlament stuff will go off, and most of the Lightsworn stuff doesn't go off except for Wolf. So Wolf, both Dragonling and Wolf will go off. So if they hit the graveyard by this search, you will get to add Punishment Dragon or Judgment Dragon, and Wolf will special summon. But unfortunately, Weiss and Felis won't work because they have to be sent to graveyard off of monster effect. So not they won't go off of the cost of this, but still, just getting some cards in your graveyard, the Mud Dragons, certain things in my graveyard I want. This is great. Just the mill 3, even though it doesn't activate their effects, and obviously not once per turn. So you see a 3 of these, you're getting pretty much full combo. It's hard for you not to get what you're looking for when you see those in your hand. Not once per turn. So Tearlaments package, right? The only one you can play at 3, you got to play at 3. Rhinoheart, he's not a starter by any means. If Kit Kalos was unbanned, then he would be an amazing starter, but he's not. So with Rhinoheart, he's great to use as material to go into an Exceeds for. But really, most of the time off of him, I'm sending a name depending what I have in rotation, or you're using him to send tier cash just to get the extra draws, right? But definitely not a huge starter, but definitely more of an extender until they change anything with the ban list. Okay, and then what we got next here, the tier package. Then all 3 you need. Obviously, they're only at 1, but you need all 3 names for sure. Each of the fusions you get cannot run with either of them. If anything, I'm trying to use, if I'm sending Merly first, because Merly I'm going to use during my opponent's turn with a Sprint. But she earns another good one to add your hand. Hatness, you usually are saving to keep in your hand for the monster effect. And then the other part of the tier package is just 2 tier cash. So 3 is not a bad idea. 2, I'm trying to test play with. I might end up changing to 3 at some point, but I do like just the 2 because I usually don't need more than that in the rotation. What I find is more important than 3 tier cash is actually having 3 Fenrir. So Fenrir is just another huge body to put in the field, plus it's searching tier cash, and it's a huge disruption. So I don't like the idea of not having 3 tier cash and only 2 Fenrir. I'd rather have 3 Fenrir and then 2 of this. You can also add him back too, so you got spells that will give you the ability to add a Tearlaments monster back to your hand. So and a trap card, crime when it hits the graveyard. So that's what I'll usually do. Is I'll usually banish a tier cash off of another one, so I can cycle it back. If I change this deck to 60 cards, I definitely would run 3, but I think this is a good number for now, but again, still experimenting with it all. So as far as the rest of the Tearlaments package, which isn't Tearlaments cards, is King of the Swamp. So he's huge. I do run a polymerization. I might change that at some point, depending on what I do with the deck. But polymerization is just an easy way to get this card in your graveyard, and sometimes just the polymerization can come up. I run Guardian Chimera in the extra deck that I'll show, but he's probably not necessary, but just great to have for going second. But King of Swamp's amazing, not only for making Lucalis, but also for making Grapha. Grapha is my favorite fusion that Tealmans was able to ever use. And you need 3 for sure, because you want to max out on having that fusion you need. The substitute fusion in the graveyard. So just the 2 shufflers. If these were at more, I definitely run more. Obviously, they're huge, not only for disrupting opponent, but like I mentioned with Punishment Dragon, you can use these 2 in combo together. So you use these to shuffle back the Lightsworns that are in your graveyard that you want back, preferably the Synchro, so shuffling back the Synchro 8, and then shuffle everything back with Punishment Dragon just to win in the grind game. So those are huge for that. Definitely would not ever run more or less than that. Okay. As far as the rest of the Tealmans package, which I don't know if you call this Tealmans package or just board breakers, or hand traps, I guess, whatever the combination. But the 3 Mokchami Pearl Lily, how you pronounce them, or her, the new card from her newest set. So I like her. She's insane because in this deck, obviously it's an all gas deck with minimum board breakers, no hand traps except for these 3. So not only for the draw power that they provide, and really stopping your opponent from full comboing, just because when you have them in effect, which if you have 2 in your hand, I've done that before already, you can use 2 at the same, in the same turn, because they're not once per turn. They're, you can use 2 Mokchamis per turn. So when the new Mokchami comes out, that's when you could use both of them at the same time. And I definitely run it in this deck. I'd probably run 3 of each and then have 6, and then I'd be at a 60 card deck, right? But why this one's really great in here, so even if I'm going second, I probably won't take them out. I might just take out 1. But I'm sorry, well, going second, you obviously want it, but going first, if I knew I was going first, I probably would keep at least 2 in, if not all 3, because since it's a level 4 water, it's material to get into Bahamut Shark. So you got Bahamut Shark you can make with a Perlory, because with this deck, I usually don't have to normal summon much. I can get away with probably not even having a normal summon once a turn. It's all special summoning. So I can use my normal summon with one of these, one of the Mokchamis in my hand. Also, it's a Mokchami is a water aqua, so you can use it as material to get into Kaleido Heart. Lots of times I get stuck and I don't have, you only got 3 Tealmans names anyways. So you need Rhino Heart plus 2 aquas to make him. So you can use one of these or 2 of these plus a Rhino Heart to make him, which isn't going to happen because you're going to use the fusion of one of the names anyway. So it's basically just, to make Rhino Heart, you're using one of the 3 names. So one of these that hits the graveyard, one of these plus him, plus Rhino Heart obviously to make Kaleido Heart, which is insane. So really good. I've had it come up so many times where I was stopped and couldn't make a board at all, but then I still at least had a play to get into Kaleido Heart. So one Kaleido Heart plus traps and certain spells set can sometimes beat a board or at least extend you to your next turn if you get hand trapped like crazy. So all of that. Now the only thing left is for the spells, and the spells are mainly more just Tealmans stuff. So you don't want to run too many spells this deck. Obviously, it's mainly just monsters and gas, but Searchers obviously the 3. You need 3 of the field spell. Field spell is huge, adding any Tealmans monster, but also fusions gaining attack, and then the pop effect is insane too. So gotta max out on this for sure. And then the other 3 of is 3 Scream. Scream's huge, not only for Tealmans, but for Lightsworn too, because milling the Lightsworn monsters will get their card effects. Also, Scream's a good thing to mill, because when you mill it, it gets to add one of the traps. The traps are huge in this deck. That's something Lightsworn doesn't have on its own. Adding Tealmans plus Lightsworn is giving you all that extra mill ability and ability to just really combo off. Okay. And then for the rest of the I'll say traps I got here, there are 3 of is, so we got 2 Soliac and 1 Crime. I see a lot of lists running 3 Soliac and no Crime. Crime is huge. Crime's, that's your counter trap, so that's protecting you from Dark Ruler. Uh, if this was Master Duel, which it doesn't matter, it's in a best of one format in Master Duel, Solak's only at one anyway, so you're playing Crime regardless. But um, if this was a best of one format, I certainly would only play Solak and not Crime. But since it's best of three, when your opponent knows they're going second, they're going to put in Dark Ruler no more. They're going to put in Forbidden Droplet. This is your counter trap to stop that. Uh, again, if I was running more than 50 cards, I would certainly consider running more of Solak. The Solak's graveyard effect is insane to add any Teal'c's monster to your hand. Crime to add back a banished comes in handy because with the tier cache, like I mentioned, you make sure to banish a Teal'c's monster, specifically another tier cache, to special summon your second tier cache, and then add it back when his graveyard. Um, but these were kind of the numbers I got to here. I like Crime. Even if I'm going second, I probably will not take Crime out just because its graveyard effect does come up and it's really huge. But I said I like these numbers. The only thing is I'm waiting for the new Moksham to come out and possibly the bringing back of the best Teal'c's card ever, Kikaos, which is probably never gonna happen. But if that would happen, where she comes back or when the new Moksham comes out, I'd probably run this deck at a 60 card deck, just a 60 card pile. So for the rest of the spells and traps here, we just got a lot of one-ofs, right? Which is probably going to change. So I have one Heartbeat and the one Poly and the Tribute Karma, right? So Tribute Karma is huge because when that hits the graveyard, you can banish it then to add any any card that mentions Visa Starfrost you need, which is all the Teal'c's cards. Heartbeat, I'm waiting for more to come in. I'm definitely going to be running two in the main and another in the side, so I can put in three at any point in time. Huge board breaker to stop all the back row decks, or back row decks and back row cards. Those floodgates, drain and anti fragments or whatever is even played anymore. Most of the stuff is limited hit now. But what I like most about this is adding a trap. So these traps are huge. Everybody discredits these. Um, with how hard a tier is hit with all the names, you're not really making as many big plays with the monsters. You're just relying what monsters you can get on the field and using these to stop your opponent. And they want to send these to the graveyard to get their effect using their effect. So what you basically want is you want a trap hitting the graveyard to use their effect to add a Teal'c's monster to hand or add one back to the hand from banished. And then you want to mill Heartbeat to add back one of those traps that's in the graveyard. So you never want to banish the traps. You can. There's another card I have on the side that does that, but I really am probably not going to run that once I get more of this. I think Heartbeat's the best one, just because with Lightsworn I'm already milling enough stuff. I don't need another way to special summon Teal'c's monsters. So Heartbeat, definitely going to run it too, but I'd only put in third if I going second. I know I have an issue with someone playing a back row heavy deck. And again, I mentioned this before, the polymerization. I am running the one. This is a cuttable card. I don't know how long I'm going to run this or not. If I put in SP Lunite instead of Guardian Chimera, I would definitely cut this. But I'm just experimenting with it for now. It's something that I might cut for the second Heartbeat. But again, just experiment with it until I get the second Heartbeat in. Some of these Teal'c's cards are hard to get in. And then I am maining 3 Super Poly. I haven't decided yet if this is the best board breaker for the deck, but it's just the one that makes most sense, and I can easily add it pretty quickly. Because if I don't draw it, then I showed I'm one of the 3 Mokshami, so I might draw it off of one of those, off of one of the draws there. So I have a pretty good chance at getting into it. In this format, it's not the best board breaker, but it's just the one that makes most sense in this deck because it's a polymerization target. And don't forget, when you do use Super Poly and you send a tier name to the graveyard off of discard, it will activate because it's off a card effect. So it'll get you the Super Poly fusion you're making plus a possible fusion in the graveyard off of whatever tier name or whatever you have in the graveyard from once the tier name activates. I do have different other board breakers in the side that I might experiment with instead of Super Poly, but I am experimenting with mating these for now. Okay, so for the extra deck, we'll go for the Synchros first. And for the Synchros, got the Minerva, Armatara, Visa's Armatara, and an Emancipator. Um, so Minerva is obviously the most important one. That's what you're using to send the other two tier Lightsworn monsters or Lightsworn monsters to get into Amatara, and then also be able to banish four different, up to four. They don't have to be different names, but just any Lightsworn monsters to mill that many. So you banish four different names, it's going to mill four, and then plus you can inherit summon Punishment Dragon, right? Um, so she's insane for that. Obviously not a boss monster, but just a really good extender. Armatar is huge in this deck, crazy good because it's adding you any Tearlaments card that you need to extend or to finish setting up your board. Also, don't forget Armatar is insane for this because it can destroy a card on your field. So if you special summoned any tier name or you have a tier name, on your field, you have Sharon, Marley, or Happiness, any of those on your field, preferably not Happiness. Happiness you usually don't want on your field because if you normal summon Marley, that's getting you, mill two, special summoning Sharon, mill three, mill three. I'm sorry, mill three and mill three, right? But this is special summon. You have to normal summon her, but Armatar to pop that on the field, that's going to get their effect in the graveyard diffusion summon. So that's something you can't forget to do before you use these two materials to go into exceeds, because you're using these two to go into zombie vampire, and zombie vampire is going to get you four more mills in a special summon. Uh, an emancipator is just there as like a spell trap negate. I'm probably the only reason I would not keep him is if I ended up making a 60 card deck. So if they when they do bring back the other Mokshami, if Kikalis never gets unbanned, if she stays on the ban list, then I'm probably going to swap him with Dispatter and put a Bestial Engine in here and figure out a way to make that a 60 card deck. Then he won't be necessary. But for now, he's good because you have all these water monsters in the graveyard anyways. So it's getting you, and you easily can make level 8 synchros with this deck. It's happens all the time, just about every test hand that I do. So he's great for that. But again, that's something that's definitely not mandatory. These two are definitely mandatory. I mean, if you're running pure Lightsworn, you don't need Amatara, but with the Tealmans version, he's insane. Makes comboing extending so much better. Okay. So I showed already the Vampire with Exceeds. The only other two Exceeds you're running, or that I'm running, is Toad and Bahamut Shark. So Bahamut Shark, you're making with two level 4s, so that can be a Rhino Heart, like two Rhino Hearts. So we got, see what he's got here. So it could be two Rhino Hearts or a Rhino Heart plus a Mokshami makes the Bahamut Shark. And also for fusion material, it could be plus the Mud Dragon. So Mud Dragon can make, Mud Dragon plus a Rhino Heart or Mokshami will make him as well. So what Bahamut Shark's getting is just totally awesome. So totally awesome Omni Negate plus, you can use him to send back a water monster, or I'm sorry, aqua monster in the graveyard. But sometimes you don't want to send Toad Awesome back because you might want to use him as material for something. So you could send back, a Tealmans card that's in your graveyard. You need to send back, and then you can use him as material to make Kaleido Heart. So that's the Exceeds. And now the rest of what we have is, well, before we get into the fusions is obviously the most in this deck, because this is a fusion deck. What Tealmans is the only links I have are IP and Sprite Sprint. So I might try putting SP in this deck, but honestly, I don't. If IP gets hit, then I definitely want one Sprint. I don't even know if I'd run SP Little Knight then. Maybe. I mean, IP is good because sometimes you have weird levels on the field, so it's just an extra monster to make to get stuff off the field. And then Sprint you're using just to dump Merly during your opponent's turn. So it's dumping a 2, so it dumps Merly. So that way when you're ready for a fusion summon during your opponent's turn, you can do that. But again, the only thing I might change with this is running an SP or just not run any links whatsoever. I just waiting for the next ban list here in August, like everybody else, to see what to decide from there. So for the fusions, the obvious two are going to be Boot Kalos and Kaleido Heart. To be honest, even though he's the big monster and so many people play tier decks, not even tier decks, just tier engine in decks just to play him and don't play him, don't play her there. But I think she's way better. I mean, being able to negate a special summon effect and bring herself back is just Ukalis is insane. That's why I love running um, the King of the Swamps to get into her. But I said I'm just tremendously hoping, it's going to be these three names soon, and she comes back. Because then Rhinoheart is pretty much a one-card starter. Every time I've been playing locals where I've been disrupted, I got to the point where I'm like, well, if Kit was unbanned, I could have still kept extending. But we'll see if they do that. I mean, she's a pretty broken card, but even without her, these two are very good on their own. His second effect is, I mean, the target effect to send back a card to the back to the deck is nice. But it's his second effect that's even more huge. Is that when he does special summon himself back from the graveyard from card effect, you can send any Tearlaments card to the graveyard, which is insane because that gets you another fusion summon. So even like I mentioned, where I had duels where I could only get Collider Heart on the field because of being able to send a Mokchami back. Then just based off of mills that I got during that turn when I had had Scream on the field, then I was able to get what I needed in the graveyard, like getting King Swamp. So getting King Swamp in the graveyard, and from there, I could fusion summon into Root Callus or my other fusions during my opponent's turn. So he does. He is nice. He's a good that he's not just about making him during your opponent's turn or when you're going second. If your end board is just Collider Heart, it's not bad at all. It can he can be pretty good at interrupting your opponent during their turn. So for the rest of the fusions here, Grapha and Garden Chimera. Those are the other two big boys. I mentioned already, he's my favorite fusion of all time. Definitely favorite fusion for that I ever played in Tearlaments. He's insane for Tearlaments because it's basically an Omnigate where you have to send a card from your hand. Now, don't forget, it doesn't work for quick effects, spelled quick effects, but for spells. Right? So it's just spell cards. Traps and monsters where you can send a card from your hand. So, but what you're going to do is the card you're going to send from your hand is going to be something that gets an effect, which is insane. A Tearlaments name or any Tearlaments card, which is great. So, when you have basically, if your field is these two guys right here, you're safe from Nibiru if they try to nib your field because you just go chain one, graph it, negate it, and then if they try to imperv him, then you can negate the imperv with an Emancipator because an Emancipator does negate spells and traps, which is insane as long as you have a Warder in the graveyard. Okay, and like I said, Guardian Chimera, that's more or less for going second. Obviously, you're never making him going first. He's a good board breaker, but I just don't know if I'm going to keep him in this deck. I'm just kind of experimenting with it for now. And then the rest of the extra deck is just the super poly targets, right? Which not are just super poly targets, but with this deck, you're obviously making these cards with the deck itself without even using super poly, especially Predator Plant. And these two, you're hardly ever making him. This is more or less a super poly target, but Mud Dragon and Predator Plant, you will make in your combo just for an extra negate and then as material to get into Bahamut Shark. Okay. The last thing I'll show is my side deck. It's nothing really special because I'm still, like I said, figuring out the ratios of everything, but mainly I know for sure these board breakers 100% never going to change. 2 Lightning Storms and Harpies. The only way this will change is probably they bring back Heavy Storm. I'll put Heavy Storm in here. If they bring Lightning Storm back to 3, I'll have 3 Lightning Storm and 1 Harpies and that. If they bring back Red Reboot, I would 100% put Red Reboot in here, but would not cut this. If anything, add more. And again, all these board breakers are nice because of running Mokchami and then soon the new Mokchami, just if you want to add cards to your hand. The one, some of them I'm not sure about is these. So these 6 board breakers, I probably will change at some point. I'm just kind of feeling out what I want to do. But if anything, I feel like Evenly is better than Dark Ruler. But I don't know because with Evenly, they can kind of choose to keep the one card that's going to get them through. I've never liked running evenly matched in any deck. I never ran it in Vanadium. I don't think it's the greatest board breaker, but just something to experiment with for now. Same thing with Dark Willow, but I would absolutely not running Forbidden Droplet in this deck, because that's not really. I mean, it could help in cases to get stuff in the graveyard, but I have to see how many draw power. I probably might do Forbidden Droplet instead of this when the new Mochami comes out, so you would have those 6 cards because you're drawing so much anyways that it wouldn't hurt to get some stuff in the graveyard. But none of the tier stuff or Lightsworn stuff activates when it's sent as cost from your hand. So Forbidden Droplet doesn't really help you. Where with Vanadium, it was great because you have all these free field spells on the grave. I mean, on your field, so you don't really need that. So you got all kinds of free material off that. So like Branded and Vanadium were great for running Forbidden Droplet. So that's why I'm just running this for now. But again, I don't know if I'm going to keep that or not. Be more than willing to take suggestions on the side deck here. I'm pretty sure I know what it's going to be once I see what the ban list is. But for now, it's just kind of weird because everything's up in the air until September. The only thing for sure that won't change with my side here is these two. Is always going to Judgment Dragon, and then this is another. It's not a counter trap, but it is Omni-Negate. So as long as you have a Light Swarm on the field, not Omni-Negate's like a Hot Red Abyss negate where you can negate any card in the field. So if they do Dark Ruler no more you, so if you're playing against your opponent and they Lightning Storm your monsters or back row or Dark Ruler you, as long as you control a Light Swarm, you can activate this and negate one of these cards that's on the field. So it's really good, and you're not ever adding it, but once it gets milled, it will set to the field right away. As chain 1 is a mandatory chain effect, because it does say it's not optional; it's mandatory that it has to happen. So that's great. JD, I was not even going to run him the side, but someone else I played that ran Lightsworn brought up the fact that he's not once per turn, which is insane. So you can just keep popping the whole field. And as long as you have the life point count to pay, which I believe it's 1,000. Yep, 1,000 life points. And again, as long as you have 4 Light Swarms in the graveyard, it's a free inherit summon, not even an activate effect, just summons. So another free body. But I couldn't. If I was running a 60 card deck, maybe I would run him and main him. But even with 60 cards, I probably wouldn't, because he's not good at all for going first. He's only a good going second card. And same with this. This is only good going first. I mean, you wouldn't really want to run this at all going second. It's not going to help you with, like I said, with Teal'c's Crime, where my counter trap is. This card is insane for going first and second. It's the same thing with Vanadium, like Vanadium Reframing. Insane for going first and second because of the shuffle back effect. Shuffle back Vanadium monsters. This because of the effect to add a Teal'c's monster that's banished back. So always good for going first and second. So the rest of the side deck for now is these. Grief lets you special summon a Teal'c's monster, and then you send one from the graveyard. So you could special summon a name and then send it to get fusion effect. This will actually it adds a trap, I believe. Yeah, so if a Teal'c's trap is banished, you can add it, but I don't like that because that's what I'm playing the heartbeats for, and I'm not going to really be banishing traps. If anything, I'm going to be banishing monsters, so Crime can add him back. So I just have him in this card in here for now, just experiment with it, but this is not going to stay in the side. If anything, like I said, this is going to be, the third heartbeat. So 2 heartbeats in the main and 1 in the side. And for going first, for sure, this might change. The only reason I will keep this or possibly main this is if I go to 60 card deck, and like I've said already how many times in this video, if Kick Callus comes back, because Rhinoheart is a going to be a 1-card starter because it gets you Kick Callus, and Kick Callus gets you the rest of the engine. That's the only reason I would main this, or even have the side, but I'd main at that point. I mean, if Kick Callus comes back, I'd main this. These 2 I put in when I'm going first for sure, because depending on playing, because the one Call by the Grave obviously is going to come up, especially if I'm playing against someone playing Shifter. But with a 50 card deck, if someone's playing Shifter, which I'm pretty sure Shifter's getting hit soon anyways, but I'm not going to steal one Call by, but it's nice to have. And then I want the Pressure Planet just so I have a guaranteed way to get Fenrir and Tier Cash. So I'll put in the 1 for that. Plus, this is amazing Ash bait. Everybody will Ash this, because if you play Pressure Planet, that's why even I'd love to play this at a 60 card deck and main this, because anytime you activate Pressure Planet, they always think you're on Cashier, and they Ash it, and then you go. So then after you activate that and they Ash it, then you go, okay, Primeval Planet Polarino effect, and then they realize you're on Tearlaments. So it's huge. I did the same thing with Vanadium, that I would always activate this first, and then I would go into Calarium afterwards, and then they're like, oh, I asked the wrong thing. Shit. Cool. All right. Any questions or feedback, I'd be happy to take. Please list in the comments below, and I will do some more videos of a short recap of the deck, and also test hands and stuff like that, and some playing.